so much of the attention from the Lord of the Rings set has gone to the fan favorite characters, and I am very much guilty of that as well. But who can blame me? It's been so cool seeing these iconic personalities jump off the page and out of the screen right into my hand and represented in a way that only Magic the Gathering can do. I mean, not in my hand yet, but you know what I mean. I'm sure we will get back to them sooner rather than later, but we are switching gears right here and right now to do some orc stuff. That's right, orcs are on the menu, boys. I want to say up front, this video is going to be mostly, if not entirely related to EDH Commander. So if that is not your cup of tea, get better tea. Got 'em. Like the video and subscribe to the channel, please. The first creature is Gothmog, Morgul Lieutenant, that costs 3 and a black and is a legendary human soldier that shares a name with the most powerful Balrog that ever roamed Middle-earth. Because the books never specified Gothmog's race, the many adaptations have either been as an orc or black Númenórean, men corrupted by Sauron long before the events in the book series. For those that have seen the movies, it's this guy.
The age of men is over. The time of the orc has come.
Despite not being an orc in the MTG adaptation, he is still a lieutenant of Morgul, leading the orc forces for Sauron, as his first ability captures wonderfully. When Gothmog, Morgul Lieutenant, enters the battlefield, amass orcs 1. Now, this is going to be the only time I read what amassing orcs does, so hear me now. Put a +1/+1 counter on an army you control. It's also an orc. If you don't control an army, create a 0/0 black orc army creature token first. When we leave it there, it is just a worse chimney rabble, which, to be fair, was a formidable limited creature. But we don't want good limited creatures, we want cool commander stuff, and that is where the second ability comes in. Creature tokens you control have Death Touch. Now, someone in the comments correct me if I'm wrong, but the Amass Orcs mechanic only allows for that single army creature token, so you're stuck with a single Death Toucher for now. It's for that reason I think this creature would find a nice home in an Orzhov token deck, commanded by a Teysa Karlov, Elenda the Dusk Rose, or Thalisse, Reverent Medium. You have access to so many token makers with this color pairing, you can build out a board of death touching tokens in no time at all, leaving your opponents no option but to attack elsewhere, until you've amassed enough strength to begin an assault of your own. Some spells I might start with are the enchantment Bitter Blossom, that drains you 1 life and creates a 1/1 black fairy rogue creature token at the beginning of your upkeep. Ink Shield, an instant that prevents all combat damage that would be dealt to you in a turn, that turns around to create a 2/1 creature token with flying for each point of damage prevented. And a personal favorite of mine, Mondrak, Glory Dominus, that doubles the amount of tokens you create. Malhar, Urikai Captain, is a black-red legendary orc soldier with menace that lets you place an additional +1/+1 counter onto any army, goblin, or orc you control that would have 1 or more +1/+1 counters put on it. For folks leaning into the amass orc mechanic, this creature is a necessary addition to your list. It has decent support in the set. Some spells not featured in the video that could be of interest would be Foray of Orcs, amassing 2, then dealing damage to an opponent's creature equal to your amassed army's power. You're looking at a bare minimum 3 damage if Malhar is on the battlefield, and if your army has been amassing for some time, you could take out nearly any creature. Saruman's Trickery, that counters a target spell and amasses Orcs 1. An unconditional counter always feels good, and amassing on top of it is the cherry on top. And lastly, March from the Black Gate, amassing Orcs 1 when it enters the battlefield, and each time an army you control attacks. With Malhar, that army goes from a 2/2 when you swing with it the following turn, to a 4/4, which is nothing to scoff at. There is more support in the set, but I wouldn't stop at only amassing orcs. I'd tap into the cards with the regular old amass mechanic from a few years ago as well. Invade the City amasses X, where X is the number of instant and sorcery cards in your graveyard. Dreadhorde Invasion will cost you 1 life each upkeep to amass 1. It has the bonus of giving lifelink to a zombie token you control if it has power 6 or more and is attacking. Widespread Brutality amasses 2 and then deals damage damage to every other non-army creature equal to its power. This would certainly kill Malhar, but a worthy sacrifice he would have made. Utilizing both iterations of amass and sequencing it correctly can get you an orc zombie army at your disposal, because if you amass regularly, it would create a zombie army token. Then if you amass orcs, it would add the orc creature type, and I think we can all agree an orc zombie army is way cooler than an orc or zombie army separately. Next is the legendary land, Barad Dûr. It enters the battlefield tapped unless you control a legendary creature, which shouldn't be too big of a hurdle, especially with the tempting ring mechanic, of which the first stage makes your ring bearer a legendary creature. It taps for 1 black mana, which is so classic land of it, but it has the additional capability to amass orcs. For 1 black and X amount of mana, you will amass orcs equal to half of the X mana you spent. For example, if you spent 2 and a black, you would amass orcs 1. In conjunction with the creatures we've already discussed, this land can churn out a disposable death-touching creature to ward off attacks each turn, or be used to add 1 counter a turn to an army you have that would turn into 2 thanks to Malhar. This is a staple land in all amassing decks, and also it looks freaking cool. Ugluk of the White Hand is a 2 black and red legendary orc soldier with power and toughness 3. Ugluk grows in strength as his allies fall beside him, gaining a +1/+1 counter when a creature you control dies. If that creature was a goblin or orc, you place 2 +1/+1 counters onto the creature. If you've got a small orc army, you can send it head first to its death and get rewarded with 2 counters. Despite this being an orc stuff video, the forces of evil in the Lord of the Rings are not limited to orcs. There are also goblins, as seen in the Mines of Moria, and really they are all part of the same family, which is why so many of these spells affect both goblins and orcs. The thing about goblins is that there are so many of them, and no one expects them all to live. If you can get a board full of them with the Siege Gang Commander and Krenko Mob Boss, you can send them to their death by swinging or sacrifice them with the Skirk Prospector, and suddenly your 3/3 Ugluk is 5/5, 7/7, 9/9, all the way to the moon. The Mordor Trebuchet is a 2 and a black artifact creature with Defender that throws a 2/1 flying projectile at your opponent whenever you attack with 1 or more goblins or orcs. That projectile is sacrificed at the end of combat, which is a free +1/+1 counter for Ugluk. If the goblin or orc you attacked with didn't make it home either, you're doubling the strength and toughness of Ugluk in 1 attack. Lastly is a creature that everyone is excited about, even those in formats outside of Commander, and that is Orcish Bowmasters. They are a 1 and a black 1/1 creature with flash, and a lot of important text. When they enter the battlefield, and whenever an opponent draws a card, except the first one from their draw step, the creature deals 1 damage to any target and amasses orcs 1. So we are taking the Resolute reinforcements and giving them weapons grade steroids here. The stuff you have to source from that guy Greg on East Cameron. There's a massive early game value here. For example, if an opponent is playing an enchantment deck and plays a Spirited Companion turn 2, you can flash those Bowmasters in before they draw the card to deal a damage to their face, and after the card is drawn, a damage to the doggo, destroying it. All the while, creating a 2/2 orc army. The value doesn't start and stop in the early game though, and can be used towards political ends. Say a mono blue player has a solid board but is lacking cards in hand. Before they throw down their flow of knowledge, you come to terms that you won't target them with any of your damage from the Bowmasters, and out of nowhere you can dish out a damage for every island they have and amass orcs for each island they have. This spell is insane and is another must-have in any commander deck that messes with orcs, and I'm quite sure we'll find a place in decks up and down the commander space. There are so many more awesome spells that could have been featured in this video, and I'm feeling very inspired. So please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments if you would like to see a homebrewed commander deck that features orcs front and center.